Welcome back to Travels with Alicia. In this episode, I will cover the best areas to stay and things to do in Athens, Greece. My family has visited Athens many times. There are so many ways to design your trip. Athens is perfect for a quick night or two if you're on your way to one of the fantastic Greek islands, or for a slower-paced visit to soak up the culture and explore the amazing shopping streets and restaurants. Athens is the oldest capital in Europe. Its origins date back to 3000 BC. It's not uncommon to be walking around and you'll see a roped-off area where an excavation is still in progress. You feel like you're in a living museum. The city is named after the goddess Athena, which is the goddess of wisdom. Athens is a great place to visit year-round. I would say really from March to December would be the best times. The only warning I would give you is that in July and August can get almost too busy. So this is a very popular time for people in Europe to be on vacation, and particularly the islands. If you're picking a very popular island, it would be very busy, but even Athens gets really busy in this time. I guess the only time that I wouldn't really rush to go to Athens is January and February. It can be a little snowy at times, but if you're going to be in Europe in January and February, I think I would pick Athens over some of the other European cities because it is more southern. Primarily, you can go year-round and have just lovely weather. So where should you stay? Let's talk about the many neighborhoods. There's about 23 neighborhoods in Athens. There are so many. The areas that are most recommended for a short visit or for first-timers are Plaka and Monostraki. On a recent trip, my brother and his fiancée rented an Airbnb in this area, and they absolutely loved it. Both of these areas are very close to the Acropolis. So Plaka, while it's small, it's the oldest area of the city, and there are a lot of pedestrian paths and roads with lots of shopping on it. Monostraki is also very historic, and it's full of, again, shopping and a big flea market. These areas are right next to many tourist sites. And then there's another neighborhood called Makarani, and this is near the Acropolis Museum. If you look at all three of these neighborhoods, you're basically surrounding the Acropolis. So all of them would be good areas. Another area where I would like to stay next time I go is Kolonaki. And this is where, I guess, more well-off Athenians live. It's an upscale neighborhood, and it's very classy. It has a lot of cafes and upscale restaurants. There's also higher-end shopping, and even that's where a lot of the chain stores will be. It's only about a 20 to 30-minute walk to the Acropolis, and there is the metro that you can use. So if you were going to be staying a little longer in Athens, this might be a really good area because it would give you a little bit of peace and the beautiful area, but still close enough to get everywhere you want to go. The only areas that you might want to avoid is the area of Ammonia or Victoria Square. It's kind of tricky because if you're looking on a lot of hotel websites, sometimes they'll have nice hotels at really good prices in these areas. And I've stayed in Ammonia once by accident because I did find a beautiful hotel and it was a great price. It just did not mention exactly where it was. It turned out to be fine. I remember thinking that the hotel was super nice, but the area was kind of dirty with graffiti. And I don't mean street art. I love street art. It was actually kind of just graffiti everywhere. There's always a debate as whether it's a safe area or not. Greeks consider these bad areas, but they're nothing like a bad area in the U.S. Still, if you can, it's better just to avoid them. Now I'm going to tell you what my favorite place to stay in Athens is. On the southern edge of the capital lies the Apollo Coast, and it's otherwise known as the Athens Rivera. It runs from Piraeus to Sunio, which is where the Temple of Poseidon is. Let me explain it a little better. Piraeus is the main port in Athens, and this dates back to 5th century BC. It's the largest passenger port in all of Europe. There are other places that you can catch ferries to the Greek islands, but this is the largest with the most options, and it's where most visitors depart to the islands. It's about 6.5 miles from the Acropolis, but there's a lot of traffic, so make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get there. So on this last trip, we were actually leaving out of the port to go to the island of Hydra, and it took us so long to get there, and then there's so many terminals that you can go out of, even at the port. So it was hard to find which terminal we were supposed to go to, and then when we thought we had the right one, someone told us they switched it, and it can be a little harrowing just trying to figure out where to go. After all this, my husband couldn't find any parking. Every lot was full, and he just left the car, and we did make the ferry, and luckily when we returned, the car was still there. So my point to that long story is just make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get to the port, and I would suggest an Uber or a taxi. Try not to drive down there. But the point of this also is that is the start of the Athens Rivera. It's probably 10 miles maybe. And we've stayed in several of the areas, Varkisa, Vula, Vuglameni, and they're all beautiful. We recently stayed in Varkisa, and this was close enough to the Varkisa Beach Resort we could just walk there. And if you're familiar with the area, it used to be called Yabanaki. Now it's just Varkisa Beach Resort, and I highly recommend it. Our Airbnb that we stayed in was like 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, completely remodeled. And I think we paid like $120 a night. And we could walk to the beach. And this area is about 20 minutes from Athens, but in traffic, it can take 40 to 50 minutes. So just to be realistic, it's a little bit far if you're going to be going in and out of the city every single day. So maybe not for a first-time visit, but I highly recommend staying there if you get to go back to Athens more often. It's absolutely beautiful. So, okay, here's where I did make a comment on this. The Athens Riviera is about 10 miles long, and it's one of the most beautiful drives near Athens. There are countless beach clubs, restaurants, and pullover spots if you do the drive. And you're going to end, and I would say do it at sunset. It is just breathtaking. And the drive will end at Sunyo, that's where the Temple of Poseidon is, and it's up on a hill. So it's a wonderful place to be and stay. It's a major tourist attraction and definitely worth a visit. So next, let me just say, what are the best things to actually see while you're in Athens? And first, of course, is the Acropolis. And on the Acropolis, there's many, many temples. And it's funny, just recently I heard an explanation that explains this, because sometimes I've talked to people and they get confused between the Acropolis and the buildings. And so someone said the Acropolis is like the mall and the temples are like the stores in the mall. So the Acropolis is the hill, and then there's many temples on it. So that's how you can kind of remember it. And you can buy tickets to it. There's 2 entrances. It's absolutely beautiful. Again, it can get really crowded, so go early or go late. And then at the foot of it, there's a Acropolis Museum. Definitely well worth your visit. The top of it has a nice cafe where you can sit up there and have a drink. And from almost all the rooftops in Athens, you can see the Acropolis. But from the Acropolis Museum, it's really, really close. So you can see how big it is. So I recommend that. The Plaka, you have to go see the Plaka, which is the old town with shops and restaurants. Ancient Agoria is a large area with lots of ruins that you can walk around. You can visit the Olympic Stadium. It's all in marble, and it's just fantastic. The other thing, and I was just talking about it, is to drive the Athens coast and visit the Temple of Poseidon. I highly recommend it. So how can you make it fun? Maybe there's some things that I would recommend actually doing. And probably number 1 would be do a bike tour. And I recommend an electric bike tour. I found the one I did on Airbnb, but there's so many that you can find. There are hills in Athens, so I recommend the electric bike tour, and it was so much fun. You know, you get a good lay of the city because it takes you through the parks. It takes you around where the Acropolis is. We even rode in front of the government buildings. We drove around where the stadium, Olympic Stadium was. It was really wonderful. So I would recommend doing that. Another thing you could do is a food tour. I don't know, Greek food, a lot of people do know it. I don't know if you need a food tour, but it's a way to get to try lots of different things. And usually when you go on these tours, you meet other people and the guides can give you lots of really good recommendations. Another thing you could do, believe it or not, if you really love art or you're into art, I always see people sitting in the museums, especially the Acropolis Museum, because there's so many fantastic sculptures there. I see people sitting there just with sketchbooks or painting. There's also experiences on the Airbnb experiences. You can see, I think they had like learn to sculpt, where you sculpted like a half of a head or something. So things like that, if you're into that, you can do that. There's also many day trips you can do from Athens. Most people want to visit an island, and both Aegina and Hydra are close, those two islands. I've been to both, and I will say Hydra was definitely my top pick. It's about 2 hours by ferry, but I would recommend staying much longer than a day trip. If that's all you have, you actually could do it, but it'll be a pretty exhausting day because you need to get there early so that you have enough time to enjoy the island before you get back. But I will do a full episode on Hydra, and I will convince you that you will definitely want to stay a lot more than a day trip. Another day trip is, again, the Athens Rivera, and there's so many places to stop along that drive. Definitely a beach club, but another place you could stop is Vouglimeni Lake. There is a beautiful, big emerald green lake along this drive too. So you have the ocean on one side, and in this one area you have a big lake, and there's giant like cliffs around it. So it's really breathtaking, and people go, you pay an admission. They've got wonderful decking around the lake so you can get in and swim and get out, and they have a restaurant there, and that would be a lot of fun. Another day trip you could do is to Corinth, and this is an archaeological site. It's about an hour and a half from Athens. Or visit the amazing town of Nafplio, and that's about 2 hours. That's in the Peloponnese. I also will do a separate podcast. I absolutely love Nafplio and highly recommend it. So one last thing I want to mention is Athens is building a new area, and it's like a city of the future. So Europe gets a lot of criticism that they are doing well about maintaining the heritage of cultural sites, but there seems to be nothing else going on in many of the European countries. But I'm happy to say Greece is thinking big. And while they are maintaining the critically important historical areas, they're also looking to do something for the future. So there is an area, and it's called Ellinikon. I hope I pronounced that correctly. They're spending over 8 billion euro to turn the old Athens International Airport into a smart city. There's going to be like a 2 million square meter park. There's residential areas, shopping, entertainment complexes, cultural activities, and Greece's first skyscraper called the Marina Tower. So when you travel globally, you'll notice like in Southeast Asia, they mix modern with thousands of years of tradition. You can see an ancient temple, but still have the world's best internet and amazing transportation options. And I hope Europe will learn and do this as well in areas. So I'm excited for what Greece is doing, and I'm definitely going to visit that area each time. They have started it, but there wasn't really much for me to see yet. So to end this, I would say Athens is an amazing city with endless options and styles. And I think everyone would enjoy a visit. Like most big cities, you can find something for everyone. I will be returning in 2025, and I hope to stay in the Kolonaki area and also visit the Athens Riviera, which never disappoints, as well as maybe get to a new place or two in Greece. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Travels with Alicia. In the next episode, I will cover the island of Hydra. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, and I would return there in a minute. Join me to find out why.